Did you know that in 2024, the U.S. State Department broke its annual U.S. passport processing record for the third year in a row by issuing approximately 24.5 million passport books and cards, 500,000 more than 2023's record-breaking year.
It's almost like more Americans want to leave the country all of a sudden.
This is the Love It or Leave It podcast, episode 1, and we are going to talk more about passports in a minute. But first, I wanted to nutshell our story to bring everybody up to speed on why we decided to do this particular topic on our podcast. We are a queer American family of 3. I'm non-binary, a little to the femme side of center. My partner is polysexual, and we have a trans kiddo who is a teenager. We live in Missouri, and Missouri is up there with those states leading the charge on transphobic legislation. Both writing it and passing it both do damage. Amid the rising tide of hate that we've been experiencing, at some point we no longer felt safe, we no longer felt welcome, and really we feel like the decision was made for us. We feel like we had to go.
A lot of Americans are talking about leaving America right now. It's not a new phenomenon, particularly when politics go the way they're going right now. We happen to be fortunate that this is something we're actually able to do. It's a lot easier said than done. But we're going to relocate to Canada, Toronto specifically. This podcast is going to be about our journey getting there, exactly how we do that, and then what it's like to be queer Americans assimilating in Canada in 2025.
I think it would be easy to veer into some pretty dark territory. And we don't want to shy away from the truth, but the purpose of this podcast is to share kind of the lighter, funnier side of doing this, because the entire experience so far has been filled with stories and we haven't even moved yet.
Our first episode is about everybody's favorite topic, and that's paperwork. Specifically, today we're going to talk about the process of renewing a passport. It's like this perfect microcosm of the many hurdles between being in America and getting to Canada.
Yeah, hurdles is a pretty good way to put it. It can get pretty damn frustrating, especially when it's just one part of 100 other things that you have to do.
Yeah, and it's such a bureaucratic nightmare. We take it for granted how easy it is to log on and submit forms these days, and so many processes have been streamlined. Anything involving the U.S. government or a government in general it seems intentionally not simple. There are entire industries out there designed to do these processes for you because they realize government paperwork is an unreasonable thing to do. I mean, think about like the little tax widgets out there. No one knows how to fill those out. We need software and people to do it for us. That's the case with passports too.
It could be easier. We realized how quickly Lori's passport was going to expire. Like, it was going to expire during the time that we were thinking about crossing the border.
That was something that didn't occur to me when we started the process. We all glanced at our passports and everyone seemed to be in good standing. You've got a few years left on yours. Our kiddo just got hers within the past year, so she still has years on hers. Mine is expiring in September. And if you're trying to go live in another country for any amount of time, your passport needs to cover that amount of time and then some.
What's the amount of time if you were just to renew your passport through the U.S. State Department?
It's incredibly vague, but at least 4 to 6 weeks.
And then on top of that, there's an expedited service, again, by the U.S. State Department that just puts you in a different category. And you're supposed to get it faster, but do you get any kind of guarantee on that?
There is something scary about just mailing your passport into the bureaucracy. That, to me, was the scariest part. No matter what, you have to take your perfectly good passport and mail it away to the government. It was like, oh my God, I mail this away and then I'm trapped here. I'm trying to leave and suddenly like I'm paperwork trapped. until they feel like giving it back to me. And it made me kind of paranoid.
Is now a decent time to talk about our privilege because it really factors into this whole process.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of our story. We mentioned that we're fortunate in that we are able to undertake this process. And when I say we're fortunate in being able to move internationally, I mean on a number of levels. Our family situation is such that it works for everyone. We don't have family ties that are keeping us here. We don't have job ties that are keeping us here. In fact, it's my job and its flexibility that's actually going to allow us to hopefully enter Canada. Money is probably the biggest way that we're fortunate because this is an expensive process. Any move is an expensive process, but immigration paperwork, to do it and have the best possible shot, you have to hire people.
Because of a lot of hard work and luck and white privilege, we are in a position that we could pay a total of $27,000.
In Canadian.
Oh, 27,000 Canadian. And that was the entirety of the legal fee. That's a down payment on a house. We're in a really small group of Americans that is able to do that. There's no way that we would have known to do what the attorneys did for us. They're not loopholes. It's just knowledge of immigration law, which I don't have.
In future episodes, we'll get into the many ways that you might be able to enter Canada. Not all of them, even if you go with an attorney, necessarily cost what we're looking at here, but our best shot at entering Canada is through my business, which requires establishing my business in Canada, writing business plans. It's a whole path on its own, and so that's where that particular fee comes from. I'm sure every attorney firm charges a different amount, so I don't want everyone to think like $27,000, that's what it costs. But that's what it's costing us.
This is the single greatest expense of relocating internationally for us, and it's an enormous expense.
Once you calculate that expense, everything else just starts seeming like peanuts.
Yeah.
And that was what we ran into with the passport process as well, because I got really paranoid about mailing away my passport, couldn't really handle the idea that it might take 4, 6, 8, who knows how many weeks to get it back. You go looking for a private service that's, we'll do this for you and we'll do it faster. And you're like, how do you do it faster? What backdoor do you have? And I don't really get to know. But indeed, there are services out there that will get you your passport faster.
I'd like to get down to a brass tack or two. One being the specificity of the photo that you have to take and send in. I remember when I was younger, I used to go to a camera shop and they'd pull down the window shade background and they'd line you up and everything and take your picture. And I never knew that there was such strict requirements. Do you remember what the requirements say? I know one of them is you can't be like turning your head at all. You have to be like straight on to the camera.
Yeah, it's like a full page of requirements for your photo, to the extent where it feels like one of those exercises they give you in grade school where the whole point is just to see if you read the instructions. That's what passport photos feel like. This very specific color background, size, amount that your head needs to fill the frame. Don't tilt, no hats, no smiling.
It's hard to look good in a passport photo.
They're designed to make you unattractive.
Oh, no. Don't make your good face. Stop doing that. That's against regulations.
Right. And you're a photographer, and I still wasn't even comfortable doing it at home. We have green screens and like a million cameras, but it was like, I'm gonna go to FedEx because it's like a very specific service, so I want to go to the place that's gonna get it right because I don't want to mail this off and have it come back as like the photo isn't good enough, and it's like, god damn it. So I did. I went to FedEx. Again, another fee that you're paying, and okay, it's like $16 or whatever, but all these things are just layering on top of each other at this point, and all you're getting is this like tiny little 2-inch photo for your $16. But I went to FedEx, And I had to go to 2 FedExes because one's camera wasn't working.
When you told me the process of going to FedEx to get your picture taken, it actually sounded reassuring to me because you were like, I want to go to the official place because I don't want to fuck this up at home because the instructions are so specific. And FedEx, they're pros, right?
And not only are they pros, they are specifically partnered with the expedited service that we hired to process the passport. So it felt as locked down as you could possibly get. And it felt even more locked down when I went into FedEx and snapped a couple pics, went over, set their camera on whatever the official dock is that conveys the information. And she had a catchphrase: if it don't pass, it don't print. She said this like 10
Don't
times.
pass it, don't print.
If it don't pass, don't print. It was like a way of reassuring me, trust me, this photo's going to pass.
The chant of the FedEx photographer: if it don't pass, it don't print. If it don't pass, it don't print.
At the time, I thought it was a way of reassuring me that no matter what, this photo was going to pass because there was a computer designed to indicate whether or not it would pass. In hindsight, I think it might have been her relieving herself of responsibility for deciding whether it passed or not, being like, I gotta do what the software says, because it didn't pass. It printed and it didn't pass. I mailed off all the paperwork. The expedited service, you still got to do a whole bunch of paperwork. You get someone who goes through it with you and they're like, write your check. You still got to send a check to the passport people as well as to the expedited service.
So you've got the fee to the company that's going to help you with the expedited service, and then the fee to FedEx, and then the State Department fee, right? That's what this is?
Correct.
Okay, so
Yes.
we've paid 3 places so far.
Yes. So I mailed off all the paperwork, felt pretty good about it. Everyone seemed to know what they were doing. And it was even doing the thing where it like updated me every time my paperwork went a further step. And so I was feeling good. And then I got the email that's your photo didn't pass. And it specified my head was tilted. I was like, son of a bitch. Okay. And I think I got that email on a Friday evening, and weekends just don't exist to the government in particular. So it was like a Friday evening, and I was like, damn it, the service sent me a new label. So I went back to FedEx and got my photo done again.
Did you have to pay them again?
I should have, but the gentleman who helped me at FedEx was really nice and even asked, did you get it done here? I was like, yes. Do you have your receipt? I'm like, it's at home. Don't worry about it. That's on me. But he didn't charge me because he was a nice guy. It was funny how many photos he had to take of me and how much he had to work with me to get my head to not be tilted. Sub-story, my head's completely lopsided. 17 years ago, I had a bicycle accident. I broke my jaw and one side broke worse than the other side. My head is truly very lopsided. So lopsided that I can't take a legal passport photo without a tremendous amount of coaching. Really, he was like, okay, now tilt your head. Now bring it back to center. Stop. And I'd be like, this doesn't feel centered. And it is centered. Just leave it there.
Yeah.
I felt like I was tilting my head when like it looked perfectly centered.
After having gone through this whole process of going to FedEx 3 different times to have your picture taken, it finally happens for you. And you think to yourself, yes, finally we can expedite this thing. And of course, that's what happened. It arrived on time, right?
As I mentioned, I mailed the retaken photo off on a Friday, and I didn't get my receipt. The person seemed really trustworthy. Like, I didn't get a receipt. I just left. And then Monday comes along, and Tuesday and Wednesday, and I had a moment where I was like, the expedited service was updating me moment to moment before, and now I haven't heard anything. All of a sudden it just went quiet, and I had a moment of, oh shit. Like, no idea where along the way maybe the photo got lost. Did it never get mailed at FedEx? I didn't get that receipt. I couldn't track it. So I called the service, and I had lovely experiences on the phone with this service up until now. So I called just to check in and see where things were, and it was a very strange conversation. I just got progressively more confused, and the takeaway from that phone call was You have to tell the service your travel dates. For us, we didn't have any travel on the books. We just wanted the passport faster. So we told them we need to make it happen by March 1st. Things had gotten slowed down because of the photo, and now things weren't going to be back to me until March 6th. I did the math, and I was like, wait, that's 2 weeks from now. We paid for the 7 to 9 day service. What's going on? I never got straight answers as to what was going on. I got huffy. I ended up getting off the phone, and I was like, I don't even care. Whatever. March 6th. Fine. I don't like having phone calls like that. They really stress me out.
I was sitting right here when you had that phone call, and your version of huffy is definitely different than other people's version.
I was just like, can you explain to me why what I paid for isn't the thing you're doing?
If memory serves, one of the questions that you asked was, can you explain to me what it is that your service does? Because as it was working out, you were going to get your passport back in the same amount of time, roughly, that expedited service through the State Department would have sent it back. And so what's up with this other service? Are you just saying that you didn't do anything or you don't do anything?
Yeah, it was very confusing. But then my passport just showed up. Literally a day later, 2 weeks before they told me it was going to show up. It just showed up. And so I was like, cool, that's what I wanted. I got my passport. It was pretty fast, but the person I was talking to had no idea where my passport was, which was my fear in the first place, was that I'd send it away and no one would know where it was.
When you say you got your passport, you mean your renewed passport, your new one.
Yep.
Yeah. I get, so they take the old one away?
They do.
Because I guess you could sell it or something?
I don't know. You told me you thought they'd mail it to me eventually. I got my passport book, but I'm also getting a passport card because why not? It was like a little add-on. I don't know what the passport card does for me, but maybe they'll send me my original passport back with that. Either way, I have a passport now. It's good for another 10 years. I can get into Canada, and I'm happy about that. I went middle of the road. I did the 7 to 9 business day priority service, which is $430. That is not including the State Department fee. And they have you write a check for $211.36 to the State Department. But it goes to the State Department, so that must be an official State Department fee.
I wasn't even part of the conversation. I was sitting here while the conversation happened across the table from me, but that's the weirdest part of this whole thing to me, is the customer service person that you talked to who seemed unable to answer or unwilling to answer even the most routine questions about their service.
What access do they have? How do they make the U.S. government go faster? I truly don't know.
I don't know either. I've always assumed that it's some kind of racket, really, where if you got in early and you were white 100 years ago in America or something, like mattress dealers and car dealerships, it's all horse shit. So maybe this is too.
Right. And the service we used was Rush My Passport. I think every email I got seemed to name a different service. So maybe they're all the same.
Yeah.
And they just have 4,000 different URLs.
This one sounds like a Southern exclamation. Well, rush my passport.
Yeah.
Who's the hero of the story?
Probably the FedEx guy who didn't charge me twice for my photo.
That was nice. Sometimes when I go through a frustrating process like this, where I have to go back again and again to complete something that really should have been completed the first time, I can get really frustrated, maybe even unreasonably. So was there any part of this process where you were just like you just had a moment of, I just need to pause or I'm going to go crazy?
You witnessed me doing my pause when I was on that phone call with the person, because you really have that moment where you're like, how hard am I going to fight right now? I feel like I got some fight in me. This person is not giving me correct information, is changing their story midway through. Nothing matches up, and that can get really frustrating. And at some point, I realized if I kept going, I was only going to be going because I was frustrated that this person was giving me the runaround. I was less frustrated about the outcome. I was like, March 6th, fine, life will go on. That actually works perfectly fine for my plans. But I got frustrated because they didn't know that. They thought they were putting me out, like that they were telling me you have travel plans on March 1st. Sorry, it's coming on March 6th. At which point, the version of me that told the lie about the March 1st travel plans, I felt like I had to defend that version of me. No, wait, what if I wasn't lying to you? That would be a huge problem right now. And you're in the wrong. Your service told me repeatedly it would get it here by March 1st. I don't actually care. It's fine, March 6th. But a version of me that I created cares. And I wanted to fight for that version of me. Ultimately, I ran out of steam and I just hung up.
Can you really take the moral high ground if the whole thing starts with a lie?
I don't think I can, now that I'm saying it. The whole thing has to start with a lie. That's what's fucked up about the passport process. If you want to actually get your passport fast, you have to tell fibs. No matter what, even if you just went through the official channels to expedite it, you have to tell fibs. You have to tell them that you're going to travel. You have to give them a reason why they need to hurry up. I feel like that actually is a pretty good synopsis of the immigration process. Just that to get to your end goal, you have to tell some lies, even though everyone acknowledges that you just tell the lie because here's the form where you have to put the lie, and everyone's just fill it in. And you're like, okay, you want me to put my lie here? And everyone's like, yes, everyone puts the lie there. And you're like, fine.
From the time that you decided to send your passport in and use this expedited service until the time that you actually got your renewed passport back, what does that timeline look like?
It did end up falling within the 7 to 9 business days that I paid for. Business days being always that important phrase in there. We initiated the service on February 10th, and I got my passport in the mail on February 20th. So about 10 days. Full turnaround. Ultimately, I don't know that it was worth it. It was a peace of mind thing for me. I wanted to know that I was doing everything I possibly could to get it fast and to have someone accountable for my passport, because I had this, I don't think it's an irrational fear that I'd just mail my passport away and nothing would come back and no one would ever find anything. Anyway, when I looked a little closer at your options just through the U.S. State Department, they do have an expedited service that they say will take 2 to 3 weeks, which isn't terribly far off from what I ended up waiting. And it would have been much cheaper, $160 for the passport and the card, and an additional $60 to your application if you want the expedited service.
If you had it to do again, what would your advice be?
That's funny because I think the answer to those questions is different. If I had it to do again, I'd do exactly what I did, because I did need to know there was someone standing there holding my hand through the government process. Would I recommend someone else use this service? See, I'm way more careful with other people's money than I am my own. I guess I'd just tell them this story and be like, do with this what you will. Do I feel like it was a waste of money? Yes. Would I waste that money again? Yes. I don't know what that says about me.
Well, hang on. You're not saying it's actually a waste of money, though. I mean, the peace of mind is what you feel like you were buying.
It is.
And so you feel like you received that, and therefore you would pay for that peace of mind again.
Yes. That's the short answer.
The longer answer is you send them the link to this podcast.
Yes.
Well, episode 1 of every podcast always sucks, right? Thanks for sticking with us all the way through this thing.
I thought we chose a winning topic in paperwork. I mean, if you really want to kick off with a bang, government paperwork.
I'm Clover, and this is my partner, Lori. This is the Love It or Leave It podcast.